Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the GSMC Hockey Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, Garrison McDaniel, and we have a great show for you guys today where we'll be getting into the Florida Panthers, of course, won the Stanley Cup on Monday. I haven't had a podcast since they won it, and we're going to get into how they won it, that Game 7 breakdown. We're also going to get into what's next for the Edmonton Oilers in the second segment. In our third segment, we'll get into my part 3 of my mock draft. As the last 2 Wednesdays, I've been talking about my top 30 for this NHL draft coming up on Friday. We're getting down to it. This is the final 2 days before that draft. I'm excited for it, and we'll be giving you my 10 through 1. In the fourth segment, we'll be talking about the NHL Hall of Fame inductees for 2024, as 3 notable names have been inducted into the Hall of Fame. We'll be talking about their careers, what they did to get into the Hall of Fame, and we'll just talk about who they were as individuals for the game of hockey as well. And then to wrap things up today in our 5th and final segment of the night, we'll be talking about the storylines for the Panthers' Cup win, talking about who gained the most from the Cup win for the Florida Panthers and all the guys that really etched their name into hockey history with that win on Monday night. But before we get into all that, as always, guys, if you would like to become a bigger part of the show, help out the creators here at the GSMC Sports Network, use the tips and donations link at the GSMCpodcast.net. You could also ask me a question, as I have my segment 5 out there. A little spoiler there. But you could ask me a question in the box when you go for that tips or donation, and it'll show up across the screen. I'll get to read out your comments or questions out loud live on air as well. So as I say that, we're going to get right into the first segment of the night, talking about Stanley Cup Final Game 7 breakdown, and that all led to the picture that you see behind the scoreboard right there. The Florida Panthers are your 2024 NHL champions, winning the Stanley Cup, the greatest trophy in all of sports, the hardest trophy to win in all of sports. The Stanley Cup goes to the Florida Panthers for their first time in franchise history. It meant a lot for these guys. How did they do that? Well, it was on the back of a day. We're leading up to this. Let me tell you, I thought there was no way they were winning this game. Like, truly, I thought that there was zero chance. We see it plenty in sports. A team coming back from 3-0 just to get shut down in Game 7. So, it happens pretty often. It happened last year to the Miami Heat against the Boston Celtics. And it happened earlier this month in the AHL with the Cleveland Monsters, the Columbus Blue Jackets affiliate, losing in 7 games after being down 3-0 going into Game 4. They ended up losing in 7 games to the Hershey Bears, who went on to win the Calder Cup. So, it happens. It does happen frequently. Well, I wouldn't say frequently. It happens like give or so every once in a few years, right? But for this felt different, and it really did. And I truly, everybody thought that the Oilers were gonna win this game. I was listening to the Spitting Chicklets podcast, which is a hockey podcast by Barstool that has Paul Bissonnette on it. It has Ray Whitney, and it has RA. And RA is a Oilers guy, from there. And he was talking about they ended the podcast with him saying, "And tonight, my Oilers are going to lift the Stanley Cup for the first time since 1990. I'm so excited." He said it like it was a foregone conclusion. It was just, they just needed to go through the motions. They just needed to go out there and play the game. It didn't matter how they played in it. They already won it. Well, the Florida Panthers and Paul Maurice and them boys in Florida had something else to say about it. Also, I gotta say, I said Panthers in 6 going into this series. The Panthers 1-7 made it a little bit more difficult than I thought they were, but I'm going to say that was a correct prediction, which kind of redeems me from the conference finals, where I went 0-2 in the conference finals. I said the Stars versus the Rangers were going to be the Stanley Cup final. It ended up being the exact opposite, but I also got every single pick right in the second round, so I'm up and down in these Stanley Cup playoffs. I know what I'm talking about, then I don't, then I know what I'm talking about. But I end up knowing what I'm talking about, saying that the Florida Panthers were going to win this Stanley Cup, and they do. It was a fantastic game by Paul Maurice's side, the Panthers really suffocated the Oilers, got back to themselves that led them to winning games 1 through 3. Only giving up 1 goal against in this game is kind of the formula that they used to win games 1 through 3. This is the first Stanley Cup Finals in history where the winning goaltender gave up 1 or fewer goals against in all 4 wins in it. And that's just such a Sergei Bobrovsky stat. Sergei Bobrovsky has absolutely, you could say, definitely carried the Florida Panthers to be where they're at right now. They were the 1 seed in the Atlantic, but it was a little bit different. For this Florida Panthers team, I don't think that I can actually comfortably say that they are not winning that they are not winning the Stanley Cup with Anthony Stolarz in net instead of Sergei Bobrovsky. Bobrovsky was absolutely the difference maker, and in this 2-1 game, Bobrovsky is their number 1 star. The Russian goaltender finally lifts the Stanley Cup, and that hits me a little bit close to home. I watched him growing up while I was a kid. He was the Columbus Blue Jackets goaltender for pretty much my entire childhood. And I, coming from Columbus, was a Blue Jackets fan growing up. Still am, of course. But it was special seeing him lift the cup. It hit me in a place where I haven't really felt as a sports fan, because I was way too young when all my teams won. The Steelers won back in 2010, so I really don't remember that. Or 2009, sorry. In 2009, they won. The Ohio State Buckeyes won a national championship in 2014 when I was 10 years old. So I wasn't really there when they were winning. But to see a guy that I rooted for growing up, watched him win 2 Vezina trophies, one of the reasons I've absolutely fallen in love with this sport. Sergei Bobrovsky is a Stanley Cup champion, and it made me so happy to see him lift the cup. It's special. Even though it wasn't for the Blue Jackets, even if it wasn't for my team, I still watched this guy really will his team through 4 games in a Stanley Cup final, will his team beat another Russian goaltender in the conference final in Igor Shesterkin, who I said was the best goaltender in the world. Bobrovsky deserved this one. He was 3rd in Conn Smythe voting, behind, of course, McDavid, who won it, and Alexander Barkov. I think I would have given the nod to Sergei Bobrovsky over Barkov, but of course you're going to give it to Connor McDavid. Connor McDavid got all but 1 first-place vote for the Conn Smythe. I think he got 15 out of the 16 first-place votes, and then Sergei Bobrovsky got every single third-place vote. Bobrovsky deserved this cup. 23 saves, only 1 goal against in Game 7 where you just have to have it. He made crucial save after crucial save in the dying moments of the Game 7. I don't know if he made a save so McDavid gets the puck in the slot, and he is basically one-on-one with the goaltender, and Sergei Bobrovsky is out of position and kind of on his back, just flailing, trying to find the puck. And McDavid has it, and Gustav Forsling gets a stick on it, and then Zach Hyman tries to get a shot on net, but nobody could get it past Bobrovsky. But even if Bobrovsky didn't get a save from that, he still did make McDavid work harder. He made McDavid take that extra deke to his forehand as he got the puck in an awkward situation. He made McDavid second guess himself. And that's why Sergei Bobrovsky won. This is why that Gustav Forsling was able to get a poke check on that puck. Why Zach Hyman wasn't able to get a shot on net. Sergei Bobrovsky made McDavid second guess himself, and that second of decision making by the greatest player that the sport has right now is the difference in this game. Really, it is. If McDavid is able to just be more confident with that shot. I mean, he had the entire upper half of the net to shoot at as Bobrovsky was just kind of laying down on his back. If McDavid's just a little bit more confident in that moment, that's a tight game going into overtime, and who knows what happens in overtime in this game. Sergei Bobrovsky's efforts absolutely win them this cup. 4 games giving up 1 or less goal against in this Stanley Cup final. Fantastic. My second star of the night, it's Sam Reinhart. 1 goal, 1 game-winning goal, 2 shots on net. There was other guys that probably could have gotten this. I believe it was Sam Bennett, or was it Evan Rodriguez? It was another forward that had 2 points, a goal, and an assist in this game. But I like to go with Sam Reinhart because he's the one that gets the game-winning goal in the second period. If I'm not mistaken, is when that goal was. It's Sam Reinhart in the second period. Carter Verhaeghe was the one with 2 points in this game. Sam Reinhart with a breakaway goal is a difference maker in this one. He's the reason they're lifting the Stanley Cup at the end of the day. This guy went through a lot in his career just to become a 57-goal scorer, 94 points in a crucial season for him as a hockey player. He's up in free agency this season, and I've seen reports that he's actually going to walk. I've seen reports that the Florida Panthers are going to be able to re-sign this guy. He's coming off of a 57-goal year, getting a game-winning goal in a Stanley Cup Game 7, 10 goals in the playoffs altogether for this guy. What's he going to demand as a contract? That might be one to look out for. A lot of guys are going to want the service of Sam Reinhart. Went through a lot in his career. Spent a long time in Buffalo with the Sabres just not being up to par. And he gets his cup. And there's a lot of Sabres guys that got their cup in Florida. We'll be talking about that in the 5th segment. But very happy to see this guy win the Stanley Cup. He's been through a lot in his career. Finally gaining his footing in Florida. 57 goals, and it's only fitting that he is the one that raises the cup, or he is the one that gets the game-winning goal to raise the cup for the Florida Panthers. It was also, the Florida Panthers got out the gate pretty well with a Carter Verhaeghe goal. It was a fantastic tip from Carter Verhaeghe. Something he just went out there, lunged at it with his stick, got to the puck, sent it to the 5-hole on Stuart Skinner, who Stuart Skinner had a very good game in this one as well. You're not going to stop the tip goal. And you give up a breakaway goal, and that just happens in hockey, doesn't it? But very impressive tip by Carter Verhaeghe. Matthias Janmark pretty immediately goes out on the other end and gets another goal. And that happened within 7 minutes of the first period. And I'm really thinking to myself, ooh, this is going to be a high-scoring game. We're going to be going back and forth in this one. Nada. No more goals besides that Sam Reinhart one that gets the game-winning goal and got him to the second star of the night behind Sergei Bobrovsky. So the Florida Panthers are your Stanley Cup champions. We'll be talking in the 5th segment what that means for that team, what that means for that city, the organization, all the guys around that team that won their first Stanley Cup, and hoping for more for these Florida Panthers because, man, that's a fun team. Let me tell you, it's a good and fun team to root for. Very happy for them. Paul Maurice gaining his first Stanley Cup. We'll be talking all about that in the 5th segment. But that'll wrap it up for our first segment of the night, talking about the Florida Panthers. When I come back from my first break of the night, we'll be talking about what is next for the Edmonton Oilers, the losers of the Stanley Cup final.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a...
Welcome back to the GSMC Hockey Podcast. Sorry, I pressed the button a little bit premature there. But we are back with our second segment of the night, talking about what is next for the Edmonton Oilers as they are the losers of the Stanley Cup final. I ran out of time in that first segment, but I was going to talk about the line changes that Chris Knoblauch had, and I guess I could kind of tag it on to this segment, talking about the Edmonton Oilers, because it does kind of tie in with like what's going on with this Edmonton Oilers team. It was interesting, to say the least, seeing what Chris Knoblauch was doing in that third period. It truly felt like if McDavid and Draisaitl and Hyman couldn't give them the last 10 minutes, Knoblauch wasn't confident with any other forward group getting out there and playing well. I mean, he played McDavid. I gotta look it up. I don't know if NHL keeps time on ice stats in their box score. Hopefully they do. They do. Evan Bouchard played for 27, almost 28 minutes. Connor McDavid played for 26 minutes in this game. Zach Hyman played for 25 minutes in this game. Leon Draisaitl played for 22 minutes in this game. Yeah, I mean, that's what I was going to talk about. That team didn't feel confident with anybody else besides those three going out there. And when you have forwards like Nugent Hopkins, Dylan Holloway, Evander Kane, who was a scrap... Oh, we got to talk about that. You're paying a guy $5.125 million for the next 2 years, and you're keeping him out as a healthy scratch in the Stanley Cup final because, well, it wasn't working with him. They didn't trust in anybody. And it's fair because nobody really showed up. I mean, you won the games that you won because McDavid in Game 4, McDavid Game 5, Draisaitl Game 6. Those are your big guns. So you're relying on them, but you can't just run them out there for 10 minutes straight and pray that something happens within that time frame, because their legs are just going to fall off the wagon. And the wheels really did fall off the wagon for the Edmonton Oilers and for McDavid and Draisaitl. When it came to the pulling goalie, when it came to the 6-on-5 situation, they were dead. Like, you could tell that McDavid and Draisaitl couldn't skate any longer. And, yeah, that's just... It's not why they lost. I mean, not being able to score for 54 minutes in that game was why they lost. But you got to rely on other guys. Like, those three players need to be on the bench for some time, right? I mean, playing for half the game as a forward is not something you're used to doing. As a defenseman, maybe that makes sense. And those guys just are conditioned differently than forwards. They don't have to skate as hard through the neutral zone to do breakouts like the forwards do. This is the difference here. The defensemen are always lagging behind. The only time that they're really skating hard is when it's in a back skate. And they're skating hard in a back skate. It's different than skating hard in going forward. So they need to have more faith in depth forwards, because it clearly wasn't working. Sam Gagner, Sam Carrick were both healthy scratches at the end of that one. They also had Vincent Desharnais as a healthy scratch at the end of that Stanley Cup final. All of those guys are unrestricted free agents coming up. I believe that all three of them do walk in free agency. Corey Perry is a UFA. That's a guy that I'm really interested to see what he does, as he... Well, he's been disappointed in the past 5 years, losing in the Stanley Cup Finals in 4 of the past 5 years, and in the other year that he didn't lose in a Stanley Cup Final, he lost in the first round of the playoffs to the Toronto Maple Leafs. That's unfortunate. That's not the career. That's not the end to a career you want. He's now 39 years old. Corey Perry is, and I don't see him playing until he's 40. I think this is the year he hangs the skates up. Corey Perry with just such a fantastic career. If this is the end of it, of course he's a Hall of Famer. 2006 Stanley Cup champion on the Anaheim Ducks. Started his career from a very young age winning, and was really the heart and soul with Ryan Getzlaf of that Anaheim Ducks team. And ever since he left the Ducks, was trying to find himself, but hasn't been able to. However, he is still a fantastic player, fantastic career for Corey Perry, if this is the end of it. But for the forwards that the Edmonton Oilers have on contract, they have 7 forwards on contract going through next season. A big name that they're looking to extend is Leon Draisaitl. This offseason, you can expect him to get an extension. With the Edmonton Oilers, it seems like extension talks are underway and things are progressing with them. They're not going well, as the reports are saying. However, I do believe that it will get done sometime throughout this offseason. I expect him to be somewhere around 7 or 8, 12.5, probably matching a Connor McDavid contract, or I couldn't imagine them giving him less than they're giving Connor McDavid. Connor McDavid is also only have 2 more years on his contract, so we'll see what the timeline looks like in Edmonton. I don't expect either of those 2 players to play for another team ever again. The Edmonton Oilers have way too much scar tissue with letting Wayne Gretzky leave in a trade in the 90s, or in 1989, not in the 90s, but you let the greatest player of all time leave for the LA Kings, and you're still getting the ramifications of it. They're still called a little bit of a joke franchise because of that. There's a ESPN 30 for 30 on that if you guys want to look into more of that. But for the Edmonton Oilers, they only have 7 forwards under contract. It's Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, Zach Hyman, who's there for 4 more years. You have Evander Kane. You have Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Ryan McLeod, and Derek Ryan. Seven guys, 2 of them are your depth pieces, but what's good for them is they have their top 6 pretty much. With Dylan Holloway being an RFA, you expect him to get a deal around $2 to $3 million for probably 2 years. Would make sense for Dylan Holloway, who didn't have the best regular season, but he's 22 years old. You expect growth out of the young guy there. I do expect fully for him to be back in Edmonton next season, but looking at the other pieces, Warren Foegele might be difficult for them to re-sign. 28 years old, a UFA. He did play a pivotal role in this Stanley Cup final, being kind of used all over the place. Wherever he went, that line seemed to produce. So we'll see if they're able to continue to produce. The Edmonton Oilers only have $10 million, though, on the backs of kind of big contracts that they have in the defense, and maybe Jack Campbell, a buyout contract candidate at $5 million. It seemed like the goaltending tandem of Stuart Skinner and Calvin Pickard worked very well for that team, so I expect them to use that going forward and maybe buy out or try to trade Jack Campbell, who's making $5 million, so that'll free up $5 million of their cap space. Go to $15 million. You have RFAs and Philip Broberg on the defense. You're only looking really for 1 more defenseman for your NHL roster, and maybe a depth defenseman from your AHL to be able to kind of come up and down. That depth defenseman could probably be, unfortunately for them, all their defensemen are kind of far away from the NHL. So maybe they do have to re-sign a Troy Stetcher, maybe a Vincent Desharnais if he wants to on a cheap deal. But Philip Broberg, Vincent Desharnais can definitely both come back. Philip Broberg, 23 and restricted free agent. But the problem for them is their forward core. They now need 4 forwards probably to round out, and probably they need more than that. But they're going to look to get guys on cheap contracts. Who's going to take a cheap contract? Well, Connor Brown probably will. Warren Foegele will surely not, but maybe that's who you spend more of your money on in this re-signing phase for them. Sam Gagner, 34 years old, could take a cheap deal. Adam Henrique, who turned provider for them a couple times in the Stanley Cup final, could be on a cheap deal. Matthias Janmark on a cheap deal. So I think they'll be fine. They're going to be kind of running it back with the same core. They just made a Stanley Cup final, though. So you can't be too disappointed in the fact that you're running it back with the same core. However, is it the core that you want? What I was talking about with their line changes from Chris Knobloch was it really showed that they were not confident in their depth forwards. So for me, I think that they're going to need to go out and get somebody. They're going to go out and get somebody on that third line that can really make a difference in a game. And who can that be? I don't really know. Because all the names that are being tossed out right now are way too good. But Cam Atkinson is a name that's being tossed out that I can really see as a third line scoring forward for you that can really turn a game. I know Gus Nyquist could leave Nashville. I think he's a UFA this year. Maybe those are the guys I can think of off the top of my head. But for the Edmonton Oilers, I think that they're going to need to go out and get a difference maker for their forward group that really moves the needle for them, as they just don't have that right now. And I think that's what they were lacking in the Stanley Cup final. Again, they just made a Stanley Cup final. I mean, this team's a great team with the best forward I have ever seen with my own two eyes, because I wasn't old enough to watch Wayne Gretzky play hockey. Connor McDavid is just, wherever he goes, good results will follow. And clearly what we saw in these playoffs is he is a clutch performer, beating Wayne Gretzky's assist record, winning a Conn Smythe on a losing team, first person to do that since Reggie Leach back in 87 was that? I don't know. Somewhere around there, 78, I don't know. I might be dyslexic and getting them two mixed up. However, the force forward to win a Conn Smythe this millennium. I mean, Connor McDavid is special, and having him on a team makes the team great. So whatever they do, the team's going to probably be a playoff team next year. But how do they win that cup? They were so close. They were one game away. They were one goal away from sending this into an overtime period. I mean, anything could have changed this game, and we could be talking about the Florida Panthers. What are they doing in this offseason? Because they have a lot of guys coming up, and they just lost the Stanley Cup final, their second. But instead, luck had it that the Edmonton Oilers were the losers here, and now they need to just do a little bit more. I think they just need to go out and get a third-line scoring guy. I think that's what this team was missing. We saw that in the third period, and this might be a little bit too much revisionist history in my brain talking, but you're also going to need to rely on Evander Kane next year, who is going to be 33 next year, if I'm not mistaken, June 9th. Yeah, he's going to be 32 next year. His birthday is in the summer. August 2nd. I was looking at Zach Hyman's birthday. Zach Hyman's also 32. Evander Kane will be 33 next year. You could see some regression from a guy that you already saw a little bit of regression in the postseason with. It'll be interesting to see what the Edmonton Oilers look like next year, because this will be a cup contender. We'll be seeing them at the top of the betting odds. Not the number one team in the betting odds, but they will be towards the top of the betting odds coming into next year for the Stanley Cup final. We'll see what they do in this offseason. I think that they do have some work to be done. I'll be interested to keep an eye on what they do. Third line winger is my guess for what they would do, but I'm not an NHL GM. I couldn't tell you. They also don't have a first-round pick in this upcoming draft, so we'll see how that affects the team. But that'll wrap it up for our second segment, talking about what is next for the Edmonton Oilers. When I come back from my second break of the night, we'll be talking about my 2024 NHL mock draft, part 3 and final part to it. I'm excited to get into that one. I'll be back in a second.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Welcome back to the GSMC Hockey Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, Garrison McDaniel, going into our third segment of the night, talking about the NHL Mock Draft Part 3 here. But before we get into that, as always, if you would like to become a bigger part of the show, help support the GSMC Sports Podcast, GSMC Sports Network creators a little bit more than you guys already do just by watching the show, commenting. It does help a lot. But you could also leave a tips and donation if you are enjoying the show. It does go a long way. Helps out all of us here at the GSMC Sports Network. But with that being said, we're going to get into this mock draft here, talking about the 2024 NHL entry draft, which will be airing live on Friday. I will be doing the podcast during that, so you will get my live reaction to the draft, as a lot of things can happen in this draft. I know a lot of trades will go down. So, talking about my top 10, I know for a fact that the teams that I have drafting these guys in the top 10 here won't be drafting them in the top, or some of them won't be drafting in the top 10 come Friday, because I know a report came out today that the Devils are looking to trade their 10th overall pick to the Hurricanes for Marniches. I also believe that the Utah Hockey Club wants a number 1 defenseman, and I think that their number 6 overall pick is a prime is in prime position for to get a number 1 defenseman in a blockbuster trade. You also have teams like the Calgary Flames who could trade their number 9 overall pick. Maybe the Ottawa Senators can trade their number 7 overall pick. A lot of things can happen when it comes to this draft on Friday. I'm excited for all of it because I think this is one of the more insane drafts. And before we get into my mock draft, I gotta preface, this is the hardest draft in my... I've been doing this for 4 years now, that I've been, actually researching prospects, trying to get a definitive top 30 here for my personal rankings. I've done it for 4 years, and the prior 3 years I've done pretty well. This 4th year, I have no clue. All of these guys are so close, and all of them are very good, very skilled players, but they're all so close, and I've never seen a draft like this. I could honestly see pretty much any pick from 2nd to 10, from 2nd to 8, anybody could go anywhere in that range, and I'll be like, okay, that makes sense. So with all that being said, we're going to get into number 10, Cole Yzerman. Cole Yzerman was a fantastic forward for the United States Development Program this past year. He is committed to Boston University for this upcoming season, so if Matt Celebrini, for some reason, goes back to college for next year, because the Sharks don't think he's ready, I doubt he goes back to college. But if somehow he does, Cole Yzerman will play probably on Macklin Celebrini's wing. We'll get to Macklin Celebrini later. The worst kept secret of all time is the Sharks picking him at number 1 overall. So we will be talking about him come later in this segment. But Cole Yzerman, number 10 overall, 58 goals in 57 games for the United States Development Program. One of the best shots in this entire draft. A guy that, can definitely play well at the NHL level. He is the most decorated scorer in the United States National Team Development Program history, and he's probably going to be a prolific goal scorer in the NHL. His ceiling really is 40-50 goals in the NHL. His floor, why he's number 10 instead of higher in this draft, is I think he has a lower floor than a lot of guys ahead of him. But I do like Cole Yzerman a lot. 6 foot, 196, born August 2006. So he is 17 right now. Will be 18 when he plays his first NHL game, if he does play this year. Going to my number 9 overall pick after Cole Yzerman, number 10. It's Sam Dickinson, the defenseman from the London Knights of the Ontario Hockey League. Had a very good year in the OHL, having 70 points in 68 games. However, he is more up here for his two-way style than his offensive proficiency in the O. He probably was one of the better defensive forwards in the defensemen in the CHL, and he still put up 70 points. I really like his game a lot. Him and who we'll get to later here as well, Zane Perek, played very well in the OHL. They're two defensemen that really set the tone for the OHL and defensemen. And this draft is rich in defensemen. Really, you have Sam Dickinson, you have Anton Silyev, you have Zane Perek, you have Z Byam, you have Artem Levshinov, you have Carter Yakimchuk, you have Adam Yurchek. All of these guys are projected to go somewhere in the top 15. So it was really hard to distinguish between all of these guys. But I have Sam Dickinson as the first of the top 10 defensemen. I believe I have 5 defensemen in my top 10, which is a very large number, but a lot of these teams need defensemen at the top. This would be Calgary here at number 9, taking Sam Dickinson. I think it's a good fit for him as well. But moving on to my number 8, here is the other defenseman from the OHL who had a better season offensively. It's Zane Parekh. He was great for Saginaw Spirit of the OHL offensively. As I said, he had 96 points in 66 games, including 33 goals from the blue line. That's very fantastic. However, I have questions on his defensive game. He's 6 foot 181. He needs to put on a few pounds. He is shorter than I would like my defenseman to be in the NHL. However, I still believe that he can be a fantastic player. Sam Dickinson is 6'3", 203 in comparison, if you want to, for these two defensemen. Zane Parekh can definitely produce like this at the NHL level, however. I see a little PK Subban in his game, a little bit. Not saying that he has nearly the ceiling that PK Subban had, but I do think that he can provide offensively at the NHL level very well. He is a great skater to go along with all of this, so he needs to improve his defensive game. But I have him above Sam Dickinson because of that offensive production. You think that an NHL coaching staff can really work on that defensive style for Zane Parekh, and we'll see how this defenseman plays at the NHL level. I have him at 8th overall. Moving on is the third defenseman in a row. It's Anton Silyev. I have Anton Silyev above the other two defensemen. First off, because he plays in the KHL, and you know me, we talked about the last 2 weeks. I love my KHL players. They get that sense of professional hockey. The KHL is the second best league in the world, in my opinion, and I think that it really sets them up to play well in the NHL. Anton Silyev from Torpedo, I believe, of the KHL, only had 3 goals and 8 assists and 11 points in 63 games. However, it is extremely hard to score at the KHL level, and you're not drafting him for his offensive style. You want to know what you're drafting him for? He is 6'7", 207 pounds. This guy is massive. Any NHL team would love to have him on the blue line. He will definitely play well. I saw NHL comparisons with Victor Hedman, which I think you're just kind of looking at his body a little bit with that. I don't think he has the offensive style that Victor Hedman has in his game, but truly, 6'7" is massive for a defenseman, and I think Anton Silyev will prove that his frame is more than just that. I think he is also very skilled when it comes to his stick playing in the defensive zone, and I think he will lead to a lot of offense through his defense. I think Anton Silyev is a fantastic pick. I had him up to number 3 overall. I dropped him a little bit because I see that teams have cooled on him a bit. However, I do believe that Anton Silyev is a fantastic pick at 7, which it would be the Ottawa Senators, but I don't think that Ottawa would have that pick when come draft night. Tija Ginla is my number 6 overall. Son of former NHLer Jerome Ginla. Tija Ginla is such a skilled player. I saw reports, and I do believe, I do agree with these reports. He has the highest floor of anybody in this entire draft. Yes, a higher floor than Macklin Celebrini. However, I have questions on his potential. 47 goals, 37 assists for 84 points in 64 games in the WHL for Tija Ginla. He is the son of Jerome Ginla. That means he is so athletic, and we see it every time he steps on the ice. And he has the pedigree behind him. He has a lot of support. It takes a village for these hockey players, and that's why you see there's a lot of guys that have NHL connections in this draft. I saw on an Instagram post earlier today, I think there's like 15 guys in this first round that have NHL ties to them. Tija Ginla is a little bit more obvious than the other ones, but 6th overall for this forward. He will be a winger. He's 6 foot 192, so he has the frame for the NHL. I think he'll be a fantastic pick at 6 overall. 5th overall, my 4th defenseman off the board here, Z Byam. Z Byam played for Denver University this past year. Had a pretty good year in the NCAA. Playing in 42 games, Denver University won the NCAA championship, most in part because Z Byam was a fantastic defenseman. He played such a great two-way game for the Denver University this past year. 11 goals, 39 assists, 50 points in 42 games in the NCAA is fantastic. He's going to be a good defenseman. He's 6 foot 185, so needs to fill out that frame a lot more if he wants to be in the NHL. But Z Byam can definitely be a fantastic player. Next up, 4th overall, it's Ivan Demidov. This guy was the hardest one for me to pick. He played in the MHL this past year, but played some time in the KHL. He had 60 points in 30 games in the MHL. He did get time in the KHL where he did produce a little bit as well. But in Russia, Ivan Demidov was fantastic. Has the highest ceiling of anybody in this draft. Truly does. However, I've seen way too many reports about GMs thinking that this guy's going to fall. I've seen that a lot of guys have Montreal taking him, but I don't think that the Columbus Blue Jackets let him slip. I think the Columbus Blue Jackets buy into his potential as they did with guys like Kent Johnson, as they did with guys like Denton Matejchuk, who was a smaller guy but a fantastic offensive defenseman. They are under new management. They are, of course, the guys taking 4th overall. So I have, to the Blue Jackets, another winger, which, worries me for the Blue Jackets. They have Kent Johnson, Cole Sillinger, of course, Johnny Gaudreau, Patrick Laine, who probably won't be on that team for much longer. But they have a host of wingers, Yegor Chinnikov, Alexander Texier, a lot of guys that kind of do the same thing. So adding Ivan Demidov, I think, would be very great for them, who has a way higher ceiling than any of those guys, but we'll see if he can live up to that potential. So 4th overall, Ivan Demidov. 3rd overall, Caden Lindstrom, another guy that was very difficult for me. I had Ivan Demidov flipped until the very last moment. Until today, I switched them around. Caden Lindstrom, I'm buying into him a little bit more. I had him probably at number 2 overall before the year. He did suffer a knee injury and only played in 32 games in the WHL season, where TJ Ginla played in 64 games, Berkeley Cannon played in 68 games in the WHL. So for Caden Lindstrom, half of a season, but in his half of a season had 27 goals and 46 points. Played fantastic. He's 6'3", 214. This center from Medicine Hat will really do something at the NHL level if his body allows him. So Caden Lindstrom, number 3rd overall. Number 2 overall, Artem Levshinov. This guy was fantastic for Michigan State. Really helped them win the Big Ten regular season this past year. I was lucky enough to watch this guy play live, as I was the writer for the Ohio State men's ice hockey team. I saw him at the Schottenstein Center twice. This guy was fantastic. He was a difference maker for Michigan State this year. Was a fantastic defensive player. A fantastic two-way guy as well. 35 points in 38 games is nothing to scoff at. For Artem Levshinov, a fantastic defenseman who deserves to go 2nd overall. I really have him kind of penned in here at 2nd overall. I think this is where the Blackhawks will go. And then we all know who's number 1 overall. It's Macklin Celebrini, Boston University standout, had 32 goals, 32 assists in 38 games, 64 points in the NCAA. It's ridiculous. 6 foot, 196. What more do you want to talk about? Guy has fantastic hands. Really great puck skills. He has a fantastic floor, a fantastic ceiling. This guy will be a fantastic hockey player for many years. So that wraps up my mock draft. We went through 30 through 1, and you guys got a taste of who I believe is the best players in this draft. So that'll wrap it up for this 3rd segment, talking about my NHL mock draft. That one went a little bit long, but talking about prospects always go long for me. I love prospects. It's my favorite thing to talk about in hockey. So that'll wrap it up, that 3rd segment. When I come back from my 3rd break of the night, we will be talking about the 2024 NHL Hockey Hall of Fame, or not NHL, just the Hockey Hall of Fame inductee.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Welcome back to the GSMC Hockey Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. We're getting right into this fourth segment of the night, the penultimate segment, the 2024 Hockey Hall of Fame inductees. We have 3 former NHLers. There was also 2 women's hockey players, and I believe 2 they said builders. I didn't look into them too much because I do talk about the NHL here and not anything else. We do have a women's sports podcast that does talk a lot about the PWHL, so I would bet that the host for that podcast did talk about the woman that got inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame, or if she didn't today, she probably will do it another day. So we're just talking about the NHL guys. 3 NHL guys, all of them absolutely deserved it. First one that we're going to talk about, who do I want to go for first? We'll go for JR first. Jeremy Roenick will be the first one we talk about. This guy had such a fantastic career. Guy played in the NHL for 20 years. Got drafted in 1988 to the Chicago Blackhawks. Played for them until 96. Then went to the Coyotes. Played for them for 5 years. Then went to the Flyers. Played for them for 3 years. Then went to the Kings. Back to the Yotes. Then to the Sharks. Very long career. And a very good one. In his heyday in the 90s for the Chicago Blackhawks, a 100-point guy, 53 goals, 50 goals, 46 goals in those seasons for the Blackhawks. Wasn't able to really replicate that success anywhere else. His next highest was 34 goals and 78 points in Phoenix in the year 2000. The guy's a weird Hall of Fame inductee. He never won a major award. 3rd in Calder voting his rookie year with 66 points and 78 games played. Was 5th in Hart voting in 1992. 11th in Hart voting in year 2002 with 67 points in 75 games played. However, Jeremy Roenick was a fantastic player for 20 years. Absolutely deserve it. He accumulated 1,216 points in 1,363 games played. 8th overall in 1988 to the Chicago Blackhawks. Like I said, never winning a major award, and if I'm not mistaken, let me make sure. Yes, he never won the Stanley Cup either. Unfortunate for a guy like Jeremy Roenick, but absolutely deserving of the Hockey Hall of Fame inductee. He is definitely, he might be the most controversial of the 3 that got inducted. I know how to speak. Inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame, but I do think Jeremy Roenick deserved it. Played a very long time, got a lot of points. I mean, 1,363 games played. You don't get that many games played in the NHL unless you're a fantastic forward. So Jeremy Roenick is the first one. Second one we're going to be talking about, and we're going to save the best for last, so we're going to go to Shea Weber here now. This guy I watched way too much of growing up. It is so weird having him go to the Hockey Hall of Fame. He is only 38 years old, and he's in the Hall of Fame. This could possibly have been his first year that he was nominated. The defensive defenseman from the Nashville Predators, first in the Montreal Canadiens, ended his career in 2021 when the Montreal Canadiens lost that Stanley Cup final. He made it to 2 Stanley Cup finals in his career, lost both of them. It's the hardest trophy to win in sports. It just is. But in his best years in his career, he was a perennial Norris candidate. 4th in 7. So at the ripe old age of 22 years old, 17th in Norris, 4th in Norris, 7th, 2nd, 8th, 3rd, 4th, 10th, 6th. He was always the Norris candidate. That was, 10 years straight that he was in the top 10 of Norris voting. And then 15th in Norris in year 2020 in the COVID-shortened season. This guy didn't score a lot of points as a defenseman, but what he did was he was the best defensive defenseman of my generation, and he is absolutely deserving of the Hockey Hall of Fame. He was a horse on the blue line. Looking at his average time on ice on the Hockey Reference page, in those years that he was Norris candidates, 24, 23, 25, 26, 25, or 26, 27, 26, 25, 25, 25. Yeah, that guy played a lot of hockey, and absolutely deserving of this. Involved in probably the biggest trade of this generation, the 1-for-1 PK Subban for Shea Weber between the Montreal Canadiens and the Nashville Predators. he's deserving of it. 3 years removed from the game now, and you can still say that he is absolutely deserving of a Hall of Fame induction. I can't talk. I don't know how to say the word. Induction. There it is. Like I said, never won the Stanley Cup, but it's the hardest trophy to win in all sports. And then moving on, saving the best for last, the guy that actually did win a Stanley Cup is Pavel Datsyuk. Pavel Datsyuk is the reason a lot of young kids fell in love with hockey. Invented the Datsyuk flip for shootouts. Was one of the best shootout guys for a generation. Like he was so fun to watch. Perennial All-Star, perennial Lady Byng, perennial Selke winner. He won 3 Selke straight, 4 Lady Byng straight. What a fantastic player this guy was. He was third in Hart voting at his peak, but really known for his two-way style of hockey. Was a plus 41 in 2008. That is insane. That's the year that they won the Stanley Cup, in large part to Pavel Datsyuk also having 21 minutes of ice time. Career high 97 in points in both the 08 and 09 season, both the years that they made it to the Stanley Cup. I believe he won 2 Stanley Cups in his career. I believe the Red Wings won in 02. Hold on, let me make sure I get this right. Yes. I believe, yes. They won in 02. I'm making sure. I'm making sure. I'm pretty sure he's a 2-time Cup champion. Yes, it was the Detroit Red Wings. I was correct. I don't know why I'm second guessing myself. That was the year that Paul Maurice lost in Carolina. Yes. I don't know why I second guess myself on these things. But for Pavel Datsyuk, 2-time Stanley Cup champion, fantastic player overall, fantastic two-way style. Of the 3 inductees for the 2024 year, he's probably the most deserving, the most guaranteed one. 918 points and 953 games played. A little shorter career, but all you need to know for this guy, just look at his nicknames. The Magic Man, Houdini, the Magician. Yeah. Truly one of the best stick handlers, had the best hands of a generation. Made a lot of kids fall in love with this sport, and Pavel Datsyuk is, I saved the best for last, is the 3rd and final Hall of Fame inductee for the 2024 year. A lot of guys that deserved it. A lot of women that deserved it as well. Those 2 from the women's hockey absolutely deserve it of their inductations as well. So that'll wrap it up for our 4th segment of the night. When I come back for my 5th and final segment of the night, we'll be talking top storylines from Florida's first Stanley Cup in their history. Welcome back to the GSMC Hockey Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. We're going with our 5th and final segment of the night, talking top storylines from Florida's first Cup. All right, which one do I want to go with first? Because let me tell you, there's so many of them that, these players, it meant so much for them. And there's so many guys that got their first Cup, and it does so much for their career. I'll go with it. I'll go with him first. Sergei Bobrovsky wins his first Stanley Cup. I talked about him in my first segment of the night. How much I loved watching Sergei Bobrovsky growing up. This guy, one of the best careers I've seen with my own two eyes. Almost won the Hart Trophy in 2017. He's a two-time Vezina winner. Has been nominated for the Vezina. This is his 5th or 6th year. This year being nominated for the Vezina now. Yeah, it's something special seeing this guy play hockey. It means a lot to me that he won a Stanley Cup, hoisting it. This guy now, I think, is a bona fide Hall of Famer. And that it's not crazy to say that. We just got done talking about the Hall of Fame inductees for the 2024 year. And I would say that Bobrovsky has had a better career than Shea Weber and JR, probably. He's only played in 700 games in his career, but he is a goaltender. So you don't play in all 82 games even when healthy as a goaltender. So it makes sense. 700 games played in his career, averaging a .915 save percentage, a .259 goals against average. On Columbus, .921 save percentage, a .241 goals against average. He had 33 shutouts in his time in Columbus. I mean, he's special. He's a special player, and to see him get a Stanley Cup means a lot. And I'm so happy for him. Bobrovsky absolutely deserving of it. When he got that $10 million contract by Florida, I was probably the first one to say that this is an overpay, but it has proven to not be. And Sergei Bobrovsky deserving of his cup. He is 35 years old now. He might be coming to the end of his career, but getting the Stanley Cup now with Florida is something special to see. Moving on to another guy that it was really special to see him win the Stanley Cup. It was Paul Maurice. When he got the cup to hoist it, he was in an interview with ABC. He paused in his interview. He turned around. He said something to... Who was it that handed him the cup? I think it was a defenseman that handed him the cup, but I don't know which one. But when he got the cup, he said something to the guy's ear that gave him the cup, and he just hoisted it over his head, closed his eyes, and breathed in. And that was such a special moment for a guy that he's been trying to do this for a long time. He tasted it in 2002 when the Carolina Hurricanes lost in the Stanley Cup final. And ever since that moment, he's been chasing it. 22 years later, he is still an NHL head coach. And you could say failure after failure, but let me tell you, this one meant a lot for him. Spent a long time in Winnipeg, did Paul Maurice, just not being able to get it done. His first Stanley Cup in his career, and it's a special one for the coach of the Florida Panthers. Paul Maurice, absolutely deserving of it. One of the best head coaches of the generation, one of the best minds. And let me tell you, just listening to a bunch of his post-game pressers, he's a guy that you could root for. He's a guy that you could be happy for to win a Stanley Cup. So it does mean a lot for Paul Maurice to win this thing. Another guy that it meant so much for him to win this thing is Kyle Okposo. This guy was the captain of the Buffalo Sabres at their worst. The Buffalo Sabres were horrible when, in the mid-2010s. And that's when Kyle Okposo was on that team and trying to get that team back to relevancy. Unable to do that was Kyle Okposo. However, gets off of the Buffalo Sabres, goes to the Florida Panthers, is a Stanley Cup champion after telling his kid before this Game 7, I used to play roller sticks, or I used to play mini sticks in the driveway on rollerblades, and now I'm playing in a Game 7. I always envisioned of this moment when I was playing when I was a kid. And that's just something special, I think the team really took that to heart. I think 3 guys mentioned that after they won the Stanley Cup, that those words that Kyle Okposo said to the team really hit hard with them and helped them win the Stanley Cup here in this Game 7. Because, I was that kid and I never played hockey. I was that kid that was in the driveway shooting into a laundry basket, imagining that it was a Game 7 of a Stanley Cup final. So it is something special. And for a guy that has played in over 1,000 games in his NHL career, not playing in the playoffs ever because he was on the Buffalo Sabres. And finally being able to make a playoff run when he gets onto the Florida Panthers this year. And winning a Stanley Cup for a guy that was a captain of such a horrific team is great to see for Kyle Okposo. It's something special for him. And it really is for a bunch of these Buffalo Sabres guys. Sam Reinhart, Buffalo Sabres guy. Evan Rodriguez, a Buffalo Sabres guy. Kyle Okposo, as we mentioned, a Buffalo Sabres guy. I know that there's more, but they're escaping me in my head. Very special. Two guys that this is also very special for. The two guys that have stuck through thick and thin with the Florida Panthers. It's Alexander Barkov and Aaron Ekblad. Number 1 overall pick in 2014, number 2 overall pick in 2013. These two players have been the backbone of the Florida Panthers, and it is a little bit bittersweet for me, for Jonathan Huberdeau to not also be their 2011 first round pick for the Florida Panthers. But for this Panthers team, the two constants have been Alexander Barkov and Aaron Ekblad, and those two have really led to the identity that the Florida Panthers play with today. They lead to that defensive-minded style that has led the Florida Panthers to winning a Stanley Cup. The probably best defensive forward that the NHL has, winning his second Selke this year, and one of the best defensive defensemen of the NHL in Aaron Ekblad. It really is special to see those two lift the cup. So very happy for just all of the guys on the Florida Panthers. It's an easy team to root for because all of these players deserve this. They went through it last year. They went through some hardship last year when they lost to the Vegas Golden Knights. Watched them hoist the Stanley Cup in 5 games nonetheless, kind of not even having a prayer in that one. Now they turn around, go up 3-0, and able to warn off just what would have been the greatest comeback in all of sports is so special for the Florida Panthers. So Florida Panthers, the 2024 NHL champions, winning the Stanley Cup, the hardest trophy to win in all of sports. We just talked about in the previous segment, two guys that just were named into the Hall of Fame comfortably, probably, deserving of their Hall of Fame invites in JR and Shea Weber, never winning a Stanley Cup. It's hard to win this trophy. It really, really is. Especially in the years of, these dynasties that we're seeing. Maybe not so much lately, but when you're in the years of the Blackhawks in the early 2010s or the Kings in the early 2010s, and then going to the Penguins mid-2010s, then going into the Tampa Bay Lightning of the late 2010s, or of the early 2020s, I guess. It's hard to win the Stanley Cup. It's hard if you're not on any one of these teams. Carter Verhaeghe is now a 3-time Cup champion, twice with the Lightning and once with the Panthers. This is also the 3rd time in 5 years that the Cup is going to Florida. So congratulations to, I guess, the state of Florida for another Stanley Cup champion. As there was talks of it being the worst state for hockey. I think we can put those words to bed now. And congratulations to the Florida Panthers for winning the Stanley Cup. But that'll wrap it up for the GSMC Hockey Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Thank you all for tuning in. Your support means so much to us. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to like and subscribe on YouTube. And if you did enjoy the show, also follow us on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook to get more sports updates from the GSMC Sports Network. I thank all of you guys one final time for your support here. It does mean a lot to me. And have a fantastic and wonderful evening.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired.